Hey guys, so on today's Hopper Hot Take, I want to take a moment and talk about CPR and AED Awareness Week as we do come up on the end of this week. I think it's important that we talk about the Sudden Cardiac Arrest Foundation and other groups like them, Simon's Heart. Here in Texas, we have the Cody Stevens Go Big or Go Home Foundation, running for Sarah based out of Fort Worth, Living for Zachary based out of Plano. All these different organizations that their goal is cardiac arrest prevention, and so many of them do that through screenings, through heart screenings, EKGs, echocardiograms. There's so many great organizations out there doing that work, and the thing is that we really want to stop those organizations, and that's going to sound negative, and that's not what I mean. But the thing is that these organizations, in large part, they start because of tragedy. They start after a kid dies, and we already know that cardiac arrest accounts for the most often death in athletics. It's the number one cause of death in students on school campuses in America, and we've got to do a better job of preventing that. And CPR and AED Awareness Week is one of our steps in how we work together to do better. Okay, about every minute that your heart is stopped, you lose about a 10% chance of survival. So after about 10 minutes, if your heart is stopped for about 10 minutes, the chances of survival are really, really small. Excuse me. And we do know that survival does happen after that, but statistically, your chances of survival are really slim. And so that's why it's so important that we address bystander CPR. And that's why it's so important that we have AEDs. And because they are two critical points in the chain of survival for cardiac arrest. They are, those first two steps. And we've got to do a better job of that. And so I encourage you, if you don't already know CPR, to find a way to learn CPR. And even if it's hands-only CPR, I would encourage you to learn. Take the time. It doesn't take long. You can take a course through the American Heart Association, the American Red Cross, and get certified, and I think that's great. I am a CPR instructor through the American Heart Association. And as a part of my job, and as an instructor, I teach somewhere between 150 to 200 people a year in how to do CPR. And we talk about CPR both in its normal 2 breaths and 30 compressions, but we also talk about it in hands-only CPR, 100 compressions a minute. And it's important that we know how to do CPR. No matter what occupation you are, no matter whether you have kids at home or not. I had a CPR instructor tell me one time, actually, that the AEDs were not in schools for the kids. They were there for the grandparents who showed up for a visit. And what we've learned is that's simply not true. Cardiac arrest happens once every 3 days in American schools. Every year. The stats say that about 9,500 kids every year are affected by cardiac arrest. And most of those kids, unfortunately, will die. But we can do something about that. Immediate CPR, AED, and calling 911 can save a life. Please join me. Please join us in learning CPR and being prepared for sudden cardiac arrest.